How many people did the disgusting FBI pay to come here and go inside the Capitol and then cause an insurrection?
To Mr. Velshi, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul.
You'll hear moans of disapproval, and X, formerly called Twitter, is going to call me a racist. They're gonna call me a disrespectful black bitch because I have said words against the chairman.
Was the January 6th pipe bomber evidence deleted? Did the Secret Service do something to protect Kamala Harris and manipulate the movement of the VP? Did the FBI obtain the footage at all and then discard it? What happened? We don't know. It's been years. Thomas Massie has been digging at this for a long time, and today, in front of the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, Thomas Massie gets an opportunity to interview and have a conversation with the Office of the Inspector General. This gentleman here, he's going to ask questions about the pipe bomber on January 6th.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized. I thank the chairman.
Thomas Massie.
Inspector General Horowitz, over the past 3 years, I've questioned FBI Director Wray and Attorney General Merrick Garland about the federal assets, such as confidential human sources that were present on January 6th at the Capitol, and they have continuously stonewalled me. We've got no answers whatsoever about this from them. Now, you announced that you were going to do a review of the DOJ response and preparation, mainly preparation, I think, for January 6th. When did you start that review? When did you announce that review?
We announced it in 2021, but we ended up pausing it because of the ongoing criminal cases consistent with how we perform our work. We reinitiated it last year, and I'm in the process of reviewing a draft of the report.
So 3.5 years ago, it was announced that you'd be doing this review, and we still don't have the review, do we?
No, as I said, the reason is we paused the review because of the ongoing criminal work that would, consistent with our practice, we don't interfere with ongoing criminal investigations.
So, but now that you've restarted it, do you have evidence of the number of confidential human sources that were operating on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
Our report will include the information in that regard.
Can you tell us today how many there were? Were there more than 100?
I'm not in a position to say that, both because it's in draft form and we have not gone through the classification review, and so I need to be careful on what I say.
So we're 4 years in. The reason to do these reports, I think, is so we don't make this, if there were any mistakes, not to make the same mistakes again, but we are just weeks away from the inauguration. And we're 4 years, almost 4 years into this report. When is it going to be released?
It's certainly my hope and expectation, although I don't control this entirely because it has to go through a classification review, but certainly in the next couple of months is my hope.
Is there any consideration for the election about the release of this report? Would you delay it in order to not release it right before the election?
At this point, given the process that has to play out in terms of classification review and all of that, I don't have to make any judgment about that. That still has to go on. Just to give you a sense of it, when I did the Pfizer...
Are you saying it's not even going to be done in time before the election?
I doubt it would be done in time for the election.
Is it going to be done before the inauguration?
That is certainly my hope. And
it's your hope. We're 4 years into it, and we know
crazy.
what we do know is you're going to expose that there were confidential human sources at the Capitol. Can you tell us today how many went into the Capitol?
I'll have that information in the report. I'm not able to speak to information in there, both because it's in draft and we get a response from the department and the FBI, but also because I don't know yet what's classified and not classified.
So if they broke the law, if they went into the Capitol, which we pretty much know there were confidential human sources who went into the Capitol and right there alongside of everybody else.
And the Proud Boys defense team say that they identified 50 people, which is probably light.
Wouldn't they need to follow DOJ CHS protocols, and do you know if those were followed?
They should follow CHS protocols, and again, we'll include that information in the report.
Do you know how many were reimbursed for travel?
As I sit here, I don't recall the number. But
Shout out to Thomas Massie, man. How many people did the disgusting FBI pay to come here and go inside the Capitol and then cause an insurrection and then create an environment? We played the video here many times where cops are tapping other cops on the shoulder to say, get out of the way, let the protesters come on in, charging every one of them.
But I recall, or you won't tell us.
And if I did know it, I wouldn't be in a position to tell you because we still have to go through.
We're 4 years into this. You're supposed to be the organization that goes and gets these answers when the FBI and the DOJ stonewall Congress. But I feel like, we're 4 years into this. We're not even going to get this information you're telling us now before the election, and maybe not even before the next inauguration. How would we make any corrections or without that information? I want to move on to something else. else. We've got FBI's failed investigation of the January 6th pipe bomb. Are you looking into that at all?
We've had discussion, I know, Congressman, about it, and we have followed up. I can speak to you about that.
I mean, they keep saying it's an ongoing investigation, but they've got no leads, no suspects. They've lost information. They've lost evidence. They can't find evidence. Secret Service deleted all of its texts on January 6th. Steve D'Antuono, the guy in charge of Washington, D.C. field office, says that the cell phone data that could have been used to find the bomber was corrupted. And now we just I found out from another inspector general, I want to submit this for the record.
Without objection.
Yeah, I asked him, does the FBI have the video footage of the DNC on January 6th? And he tells me when he asked the FBI for the video footage, they don't even have video footage of the DNC that we know was created on January 6th. It's almost as if they don't want to know. Can you rule out that there were any confidential human sources involved in the whole pipe bomb thing on January 6th?
Just rule it out.
I'd have to go back, Congressman, and refresh myself on what information we've gathered to date on that. I don't know as I sit here.
Okay.
They never know. Christopher Wray, pipe bomb. Oh, January 6th. Oh, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Well, yeah, I'll look in and get back to you. Hello. It was one of the prime narratives on that entire day. They were going to blow up the DNC, blow up the RNC. It was going to be this mass terror attack. Kamala Harris was right out there, right outside. Suddenly they can't remember it.
That would be a huge revelation.
But I'm happy to come.
I think we should get that and get it public before the election. I yield back.
Good stuff over there from Thomas Massie. Very grateful to have him. And I want to play a little bit of a clip from Tristan Leavitt. He was here last week giving us a preview of this testimony. Here's a little bit of this.
1 year later, the FBI reinstated his security clearance and agreed to restore 27 months of back pay. This amounts to an official admission by the FBI that claims about his disloyalty to the U.S. were false. His clearance should never have been revoked in the first place. And this year, whistleblower after whistleblower from inside the FBI security clearance office has pulled back the curtain on the dysfunction and political bias in the security division. Last week, I sent a 22-page letter to the committee outlining these problems. As that letter details, each and every one of the line-level employees who worked on the review believed Marcus should retain his security clearance. The initial investigator believed it, a second investigator believed it, the first adjudicator believed it, and a second adjudicator believed it. So how did his clearance still get suspended and revoked, contrary to both whistleblower retaliation and clearance adjudication law? High-level officials, at least one of whom is still in the security division, overruled these line-level staff and intimidated employees into doing what they wanted. Division employees lived in fear of a stranger bringing the so-called Kelly cart to their desk to package up their belongings while they were escorted out of the building and fired. And sure enough, of the 4 line-level employees who worked on Marcus's case, 2 of them also suffered reprisal from the FBI for trying to treat him fairly. In fact, the entire leadership of the division's clearance adjudication unit was removed in September 2023, apparently in reprisal for standing up to improper direction from leadership. Empower Oversight is now representing 3 current or former security division employees retaliated against by their managers. This summer, we disclosed to the public that the security division forced FBI employees to rat out their coworkers if they'd ever heard them, quote, vocalize for President Trump or, quote, vocalize objection to the COVID-19 vaccination.
And let's listen to one of those whistleblowers. So this is who they're representing. This is Mr. Allen, and he's explaining what he's gone through.
The FBI weaponized the security clearance process to retaliate against me for protected whistleblower activity. In late 2021, I raised concerns about the FBI director's testimony about the January 6th Capitol riot, not out of political motivation, but out of a duty to truth and integrity. This act, which I believe to be in the spirit of transparency and accountability, led to unexpected and severe consequences. Almost exactly 3 years ago today, I forwarded news articles to my superiors and others within the FBI about January 6th. It was literally one of my job duties to keep my colleagues informed about open source intelligence related to their cases. As a result of simply doing my job, the FBI accused me of promoting conspiratorial views and unreliable information. The FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States, suspended my security clearance, suspended my pay, and refused to allow me to obtain outside employment or even accept charity. This once storied institution, whose initials ironically stand for fidelity, bravery, and integrity, was punishing me for bravely challenging their integrity while they questioned my fidelity. The suspension ultimately lasted for 27 months. During that time, the FBI held my family and me in indefinite limbo, awaiting a final decision. Determined to not lose our home, my wife and I took early withdrawals from our retirement account to survive. It became clear that the FBI, with endless resources, the American people's money, was trying to destroy me financially, that I would give up. This is a fear of countless potential whistleblowers who see the personal cost of integrity. There are no words strong enough to describe the impact the FBI's lies about me have had on me and my family. The stress has taken a toll on our health, and our children have suffered, traumatized by the thought of our door getting kicked in or dad not coming home. The battle for truth and justice will cost you, but the arduous good is worth it. The FBI's restoration of my clearance earlier this year, thanks to the efforts of Empower Oversight and the American Center for Law and Justice, was absolute vindication. It's a point I would not have reached without the prior help of Bigley Ranish and Judicial Watch. However, the experience is also a stark reminder of the system's flaws. It took legal battles, public scrutiny and patience over 3 long years. No other FBI whistleblower has ever had his clearance restored as I did. Garrett O'Boyle and his family are still suffering in the same limbo we were, with no access to due process and no limit on the FBI's ability to delay and avoid independent accountability. How many other whistleblowers remain silent, fearing the same ordeal my family and Garrett's family faced, with little hope of vindication at the end? Despite the stress and uncertainty, I've never once regretted standing up for truth. In fact, I'm grateful for the experience. Indeed, my family and I persevered due to our strength and faith, God's grace, and the sacraments. If you do not worship God, then you will worship something else. You can either serve God or you can serve mammon, but you can't serve both. This has been a purification. While we lost material items, we gained more important things. We've stored up for ourselves treasures in heaven. What we have gained spiritually has far outweighed what was lost materially. John Adams noted that the framework of our country was built for a moral and religious people, unfit governance of any other. James Madison notes the duty to honor God is precedent, both in order of time and degree of obligation, to the claims of civil society. Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe. I recently learned about comments made by Mr. Jeffrey Veltri suggesting I was delusional, believing in and seeking guidance from the Holy Spirit. Mr. Veltri currently serves as special agent in charge of the Miami field office, but at the time he was an executive at Security Division overseeing security clearance decisions. To Mr. Veltri, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul. This isn't about me, it's bigger. I am hopeful that the truth of what happened will be fully revealed and deter the FBI from doing the same injustice to others. Though the path may be difficult, I must plead with other employees who have witnessed wrongdoing that they find the courage to speak up. You're not alone, nor will you ever be. Psalm 139 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" I've been blessed to be supported by God's sanctifying grace, the blessed sacrament, men and women of goodwill, other whistleblowers, the charity of the American people, prayers, and great attorneys along the way, like Tristan and Jason of Empower Oversight.
Shout out, defendwhistlblowers.com to support
please do
those
not
guys.
be silenced by the FBI's mistreatment. We are all here to support you if you choose to come forward. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Equally important is the awareness and involvement of the American people. This is your country. While I feel vindicated now in getting back my security clearance, it is sad that in the country for which I fought as a Marine, the FBI was allowed to lie about my loyalty to the United States for 3 years. Unless there is accountability, it will keep happening to others. Better oversight and changes to security clearance laws are key to stopping the abuses suffered by whistleblowers like me. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Peace and all good.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. God bless you. Amen to that entire statement. And you can see that guy has been through the ringer there. And he's exactly right about this, my friends. We are in the middle of a spiritual battle, and we're glad to have him on our side with his nice plea to other whistleblowers to stand up and be heard. Now, we'll carry on here and listen to what the rest of the testimony sounded like with a little excerpt here from Jim Jordan.
Terrorism Task Force, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, the very next day I find to be interesting. On September 30th, 2021, the next day, just so happened, your 5-year reauthorization for your security clearance came due, and they said, no problem. Mr. Allen should keep his security clearance. After all, he's had it for 20 years, right? Yep. That happened the next day.
Correct, sir.
Decorated Marine veteran, employee of the year at the Charlotte Field Office, had a security clearance for 20 years. They reauthorized your security clearance. Something else happened that next day. Your email got forwarded to the security division and to Mr. Veltri, is that right?
That's correct.
And then 19 days later, Mr. Veltri opened an investigation into your security clearance status.
And that's the same guy who's in charge of the Trump assassination investigation with Ryan Ruth in Florida.
I get all those facts right, Mr. Leavitt? Is that what happened with Marcus in those 2 days? Then 19 days later?
Yes, from what we can tell, Veltri directed that day that it be opened. It's just that the underlings under him didn't carry that out until 19 days later.
Yeah, and he directed they look into a guy, decorated Marine veteran, held a security clearance for 20. They look into him because Mr. Allen said there's a chance the FBI leadership hasn't been square with us, right?
That's correct.
And he cited a New York Times article. They thought the same thing. And oh, by the way, there's the history that we all know about. FBI spied on the president's campaign, lied to the FISA court, investigated parents at school board meetings, said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. So we got all that history, and he gets investigated for that because he simply questioned the leadership, went through the appropriate channels. Mr. Horowitz, did Mr. Veltri and the people at the security division follow the standard process?
They did not.
They did not.
Oh.
In fact, isn't it true that, Mr. Leavitt, isn't it true that some of the people, I think you cited 4 of them in your statement, 4 people, the initial investigator, the second investigator, the first adjudicator, and another adjudicator, all got reassigned. They all agreed that Mr. Allen should keep his security clearance. This investigation shouldn't have happened, and they get reassigned or something happens to them.
4 of them all did not recommend that his clearance be, that there be a negative action on it. 2 of them were reassigned.
2 were reassigned. Some of them are whistleblowers now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Man, if that's not political, I don't know what is. Oh, and they didn't stop there. They piled on. They also said, if Mr. Allen, he questioned whether he should get the vaccine or not. They came after him for that. Is that right, Mr. Leavitt?
Yes.
And then they went after
Illegal.
his faith. Direct attack on the First Amendment. Because he's a Christian, because he's a Catholic, because he takes his faith seriously. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
We got to take his security clearance away from him, even though he served our country, decorated
Arrest him
Marine,
right now.
and held a security clearance for 20 years. That sure looks political to me, Inspector General Horowitz. Does it look political to you?
Congressman, as I said earlier, we've seen issues with the FBI and how it's treated whistleblowers, frankly, across the spectrum. And I agree with you, it's very concerning.
Eliminate the FBI.
That would be done
yeah,
here.
it's very
we know
concerning.
they're political because while all this
it
is
is.
going on, they used the questionnaire. Isn't that right, Mr. Leavitt? Isn't that right? They used this questionnaire to people they wanted to snitch on folks like Marcus Allen. They gave him a questionnaire.
Those were used in the case of a handful of employees, and I know that Mr. Horowitz's office is looking at that. I think it's important to note that the questionnaire wasn't the only thing, right? These
I
questions were asked
understand that.
across
I'm
the
talking
board.
about that way they piled on to go after
Yeah.
Mr. Allen and keep his security clearance and keep his pay from him for 27 months. And they did the same thing to Garrett O'Boyle. And what that has meant, as you indicated in your testimony, what that has meant to his family, Mr. O'Boyle's family. And this questionnaire said, did anyone ever vocalize support for President Trump? All right, you're allowed to say things about the President of the United States when you work in the FBI, aren't you, Mr. Horowitz?
No.
You're allowed to say you support a president. You're allowed to say that in the FBI.
Absolutely, those questions are highly inappropriate.
And you're allowed to decide what kind of health decisions you're going to make with your own body, right?
No,
That-
not in
those shouldn't be
Christopher Wray's
grounds for
FBI.
saying you're somehow disloyal to the country, but that's what they did. Highly inappropriate questions being asked of witnesses during security clearance investigations. That's your testimony, right, Mr. Horowitz?
That's correct.
And he got reinstated just recently. Marcus Allen got reinstated, right, Marcus?
Yes, sir.
Why haven't they given you your money?
I am not aware why it's taking them
'Cause
4
they're
months
pieces of work,
to
that's why.
cut a check for all the back pay. I have no idea why it's taking that long.
They put you through pure hell for 27 months, falsely accused you. They go through the process. 4 people get reassigned because they agree with you, but the politics of Mr. Beltry, who, oh, by the way, as Mr. Leavitt pointed out, is now running the second assassination investigation on President Trump in Miami. I find that just astonishing.
Wild.
And they won't pay you.
Right, we're still waiting for the payout.
When was the final agreement? When was the final settlement with the FBI? What was the date, Mr. Leavitt?
June 1st.
Well, they've had time. Doesn't take that long to write a check, for goodness sake. But he's still in waiting. That's how our FBI treats a good man who has served our country for 20 plus years. Ridiculous. And yet the Democrats say there's no weaponization. You got to be kidding me.
Okay, so let's go to a Democrat who is now going to explain what they think of what's happening here. And you know, this is Miss Plaskett. All right, so get ready for this one. It's a good one. And there's a content warning here, so just get ready for it.
Thank you and good morning to everyone here.
Good morning,
at
Stacey.
this Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government.
Yeah, good to see you.
In 46 days, Americans will go to the polls for one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Americans will decide the composition of Congress as well as the next president of the United States.
Yes.
And then prayerfully, this select committee will be over.
What?
Because the purpose of this committee will no longer be necessary.
Because you'll control
What was
everything.
that purpose? Well, it's what I said almost 2 years ago. To test out conspiracy theories, prop up those stories that the far right wishes to push into the American psyche, and to lay the groundwork for a dictatorial government led by Donald Trump.
You people are prosecuting him. Hello, 234 years of American precedent, all shattered. You're saying that no other president has ever done anything criminal at all. What about Obama blowing up American citizens with drone strikes without due process of law? Many things that we could talk about. But Trump is a dictator?
Immediately, you'll hear moans of disapproval, and X, formerly called Twitter, is going to call me a racist. They're going to call me a disrespectful black bitch because I have said words against the chairman, my white male counterpart on this committee. I'm a tool of the woke agenda. I've heard it. I've read it all.
Hey, nobody called you that, okay? You called yourself that, psychopath.
As well as so many of my colleagues that are here. More moderate individuals will say I'm being an alarmist and that there's no way America becomes a dictatorship. We're just pointing out how the federal government comes after conservatives. But in the 2 years that we've been doing this Groundhog Day over and over and over again, there has been no evidence to show that the federal government, and in particular the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, or the Department of Justice, has been wholly weaponized against the right.
They're just censoring right stories. They're prosecuting right protesters. They're prosecuting Donald Trump. Why did they raid Trump's residence and they didn't raid Hillary Clinton's residence or Joe Biden's residence over their classified documents problem? Because it was obstruction? Okay. That's what Hillary did. She deleted stuff with BleachBit and they destroyed phones with hammers. Okay. So talk about obstruction. Now here's Matt Gaetz. He's going to come and explain more for us about what's happening.
I try to be be a little open-minded when I hear a provocative argument, and I just sort of wonder, when would I be in favor of taxpayer-funded sex change operations for the illegal aliens? And maybe if it was mandatory, maybe if it wasn't optional, but mandatory, it would be a pretty substantial deterrent at the border. But to the matter at hand.
That's a great point. Yeah. We should just embrace liberal ideas. Totally. 100% at the border. You want to come into our country, you get a sex change operation, then you can come in. Then nobody will come, I think. Is that going to backfire?
Mr. Allen, it's good to see you again. You came last year and you told us about these terrible things the Department of Justice was doing to you. And you've testified today you still don't think the Department of Justice has treated whistleblowers like yourself and others fairly. Is that your testimony?
That's correct. The treatment is unfair.
Do you agree with that assessment, Mr. Horowitz?
As I said in my testimony, Congressman, I think putting someone like Mr. Allen on unpaid leave for 2+ years is unfair while you're trying to adjudicate.
Yeah, no,
I
get
get
that.
There needs to be a process here that
Well,
happens promptly.
the process was to punish these people and to make an example of them.
Yeah.
That's obvious to
Our
everyone.
own government.
They saw
For blowing the whistle.
improper actions at
Yep.
the FBI and DOJ. They blew the whistle on it, and then the process was the punishment, and it was the point. I think that's how Mr. Allen feels, is it?
Correct. The process in this
Right.
instance definitely felt like the punishment.
Yeah.
So they've done it to you, they've done it to others. Mr. Horowitz says it shouldn't have been done. And so now I want to be a little reflective about this with Congress. Mr. Allen, you've seen since you have given us this testimony, us continue to pass continuing resolutions that put no consequence
I like where
on the
this is going.
DOJ or the FBI for what they've done to you and your colleagues. Do you think Congress has appropriately protected whistleblowers?
I do not, Congressman, and I think the policy recommendations can be put forward that there can be bipartisan support for to protect whistleblowers going forward in the future.
Absolutely. I mean this in no way as a partisan critique. Matter of fact, it's a bipartisan critique that we all own because we see the evidence that you get mistreated. We hear from the experts like Mr. Horowitz that this is totally off book. It's obvious to anyone with a brain they're doing it to hurt you and to make an example out of you. And what do? We just sign the check and we just send it over. We should put in any continuing resolution that until you get paid and until the rest of the whistleblowers get their back pay, maybe the FBI director doesn't get his paycheck. Maybe the Attorney General shouldn't get his paycheck. Maybe the FBI director shouldn't get the use of the private jet that he likes to fly around the country on so much. They enjoy all of the accoutrements of their position, and you end up screwed. And we're okay with it, apparently. Any member who votes for these continuing resolutions is voting to perpetuate the punishment that has been instituted on the whistleblowers. And while we want to talk about the weaponization of the Justice Department, rightfully so, we write the check for it, and we underwrite the debt for it. And it is sickening to me. Mr. Horowitz, I got a few questions for you since we got you here. Now, the CIGI is the Council of Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency, right?
That's right.
And you're the past chair?
I was the chair from 2015 through 2020.
Does it have any binding legal authority?
It was created by Congress as an agency.
Yeah, but does it have legal authority to issue subpoenas that it can compel?
It has not been given subpoena authority.
Okay, so what I wonder is where this group CIGI, I'll just call it the Integrity Committee, what happens when they start interfering in the work of IGs to expose corruption? Who adjudicates that?
So Congress actually created the Integrity Committee again back in 2008, gave it its authorities. The Integrity Committee puts forth a set of policies and procedures. It's required to provide them to Congress. That's the mechanism.
Yeah, but in a state of conflict, right, where you got an IG working to expose corruption, and then you've got the CIGI hassling the IG, who resolves that?
Well,
because nobody in the CIGI is the head of it's not confirmed by the Senate, but IGs are confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah, and it probably in part depends on, there are two types of IGs. There's presidentially nominated Senate-confirmed IGs. There's then agency IGs. For presidentially nominated Senate-confirmed IGs, ultimately it's up to the president to decide what he wants because the report goes to the president.
And the presidential power, not to get into a constitutional regression here, but the presidential power is vested in the IG, not in this administrative committee, right?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Okay, so the question is going to be, what is the pressure on the IG to sanitize the report on January 6th when it ultimately drops? So some nice questioning there from everybody except Stacey Plaskett, who is calling herself very inappropriate names in her own mind for whatever reason. But we're happy to see Congress is hearing from the whistleblowers, and so we're going to continue to cover that stuff here. We hope you join us as we do. Thank you so much for subscribing. Wherever it is you're watching this, thank you so much for sharing the show with a friend or family member. Really the only way we get outside of the YouTube bubble, and so we're thankful for that. We'll look forward to seeing you and your friends back here on the next one.